Good morning again, and welcome to the CBOF54 workshop, The Wolf of Diversity. Before we begin, I would like to reiterate our housekeeping rules. Please, for an optimal virtual experience for everyone, we ask that you keep your mics muted and your cameras off. Remember, if you have questions, you can put those in the chat. Again, if you wish to enlarge your screen, please click the three dots in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and select Make Large Screen. And now we will proceed with the Wolf of Diversity. Our moderator for this workshop is Farad Ali. Farad is the president and CEO of Supplier. Joining Farad as panelists are Byron Witherspoon from Amarin, Pratik Patel from MasterCard, Christina Tyson from PepsiCo, and Dion Michelle Creighton from United Airlines. Farad, you may take the virtual stage.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. I pray all and everyone is well and safe in this COVID space. Started this virtual world, and we've all began to pivot differently. Pivot has become the new word in our work. But as we get going, I like to do is first is introduce the panelists and say a little bit about themselves and who they work for and what they're doing, and then we begin the questions. How about if we start with you, Christina?
Perfect. I'm Christina Tyson. I lead our supplier diversity program for PepsiCo. I've been with Pepsi for about 7 years, mostly on the sales side, and recently came over to the supplier diversity world about 6 months ago. Super happy to be here and can't wait.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Christina. Dion, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dion Creighton with United Airlines. I've been with the airline for about 5 years, focusing solely on supplier diversity, and I'm enjoying helping to take our program to the next level, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for being there. Pratik, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with you?
Yes, hello. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Pratik Patel, been with MasterCard for 3 years, and I support category management for IT services and our contractor program. And I'm just passionate about diversity, especially as it relates to labor and how we can fully leverage the capabilities of our diverse supply base.
Thank you. Last but not least, Byron.
Yeah, good morning, Fareed. Appreciate being here. Byron Witherspoon, Director of Supply Diversity, and most recently Supply Chain Sustainability with Amarin. I've been with the company for now going into my 14th year. Super excited about the things we are doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you all for being here. One is going to be talking. You can jump in as you see appropriate, but we just want to talk about this wolf of diversity. It was interesting that became the title of this work, but really some people, we already understand diversity. We know how these programs work. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and its statement and how you work? And I'll just start in the same order we spoke about. Christina, tell me about how diversity, the program works in your space, how MBEs can get excited about it. What's the program or the process, things that you've done in the past?
Yeah, so great question. PepsiCo has had a formal supplier diversity program since 1982, which is the same year we actually joined the NMSDC. We started with about $5 million in spend with minority and women-owned businesses, and now, almost 40 years later, we recently achieved $1 billion in spend with diverse businesses in 2020. Due to everything that happened in 2020 around racial unrest and social injustice, our global CEO, Ramon LaGuarta, went public with our racial equality journey, which we're calling our REJ commitment. This commitment supports Black and Hispanic communities and focuses on 3 pillars, so people, business, and community. Within the business pillar, we've committed to spend an incremental $350 million with Black-owned businesses by 2025. And our goal is to organically fortify and grow our existing annual investment of $275 million with Hispanic-owned businesses as well. These commitments, I can say, have brought a new energy to our supplier diversity program as the entire company is now leaning in to achieve these goals. So we've basically moved from a global procurement program to being on a path to having this program a part of our company's overall DNA.
to be able to go from 5 million to over $1 billion and work in that space, particularly with this focus on social justice. Although we've always had the issue of utilization for diverse businesses as a key for the work that we do here, it's always important to see people grow from that, and that's just to survive in that space, but to thrive. Dion, tell us a little bit about what's going on in your space, on how you all look at supply diversity and impact on your company.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Well, at United, we are and have always been dedicated to helping connect not just places, but people as well. And we're dedicated to fostering a more open, prosperous, and tolerant world. And in order to fulfill that mission, our people and processes must be as far reaching as the communities we connect and the communities we serve around the globe. And to that end, our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion extends to our workforce and continues in our relationships with our suppliers. And as a global operating company with countless moving parts, we know the scale of impact we can make on local communities around the world by reaching out to suppliers of all backgrounds and sizes. So we are working right now to be inducted into the $1 Billion Roundtable by 2025, and we're very excited about that goal. And to that end, we have created a community of stakeholders within our organization called We Stand United to help us to reach that goal, and it's also in order to diversify our workforce and our suppliers. So that's what we're working towards now.
Okay, We Stand United. Is that like United Air? Y'all working that into the process and making sure?
We are. We try to be consistent and inclusive across all of our initiatives. So we are. We Stand United. Thank you for pointing that out. We love that. So that's something that we're working through now.
All right. I see you. Talked a little bit about how your company, your passion is workforce development. One of the things that we talk around in diversity in this space is I always talk about this economic multipliers that people don't recognize, because diverse people hire more diverse people in their work. So a diverse CEO or a woman CEO, typically the leadership and the staff tends to be more as a percentage wide, more like the person that's the president. So tell us more about what you're doing in business to help continue to support supply diversity.
Still me, Brad?
You know more. We did United. This is a T. But thank you. Pratik, you?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know that the question was for me. I thought it was for United. That's why I was thinking.
Move just like that. Come on.
So let me kind of talk about it from exactly what you're saying, from a diversity breeds diversity perspective. Okay, because that's the approach that we're taking here at MasterCard as well. It's one thing to be intentional about really providing equal opportunities for all classes, but it's another thing to be able to really take that to the next level in terms of our diverse suppliers, and also ensuring that our diverse suppliers are doing their part to also foster diversity within their ecosystem. So that's one piece of diversity breeding diversity. The other piece is, from a labor standpoint, we care about the talent that is coming in, and we want that diversity of thought, inclusion that comes in from our supply base. And so we are really encouraging our suppliers and also looking at the talent that our suppliers are providing to us to support, that they're also coming from a diverse background of the talent. And so that is two areas, right, that I can share with you from a MasterCard perspective of how we're truly trying to drive more of an ecosystem impact as it relates to diversity. And then the last thing that I would share is that we not only want to develop diverse suppliers, but we want these suppliers to be able to be leveraged by others in the industry as well. So we're first kind of building out the foundation, developing these suppliers, and then introducing them to others so that they can also foster and be successful in terms of supporting the services that they provide to us that could also be provided to other companies.
Wow, thank you so much for that kind of the intentional, in the kind of space of understanding that you can be intentionally inclusive.
Hey, Fareed.
And so I was going to go to Byron next. I'm sorry, Brian. I want to go ahead, do what you do.
Well, no, man. I was just going to tag on to Pratik's comments. When you think about the multiplier, Fareed, you were talking about the multiplier effect. No, so Ameren is a regional utility, but what I like about what Pratik said is that, hey, look, it's good for diverse companies to do business with us, but if we're on ensuring enough growth and to impact the region, see, we want our companies to be sustainable, not only with us, but with other industries within our region. It makes our region stronger, right? And so then we take on that fiduciary responsibility from how we go about our approach with supply diversity and creating, those opportunities for companies to grow with us. But if they're growing with us and have some opportunity within the region, it makes our overall economic impact sort of that much more wider our approach. And so it just makes sense for us to do that.
I appreciate you saying that. So I'm going to take the same kind of pattern to go forward, and you all could just take the question. I won't ask it twice. You could just hear it once. Is you all are talking around this issue around being united and people and business and communities, and talking around your workforce and how it has an economic multiplier for your community. So what I want to hear from each one of you all is a story of how your work in supply diversity has created an outcome for your community, a multiplier, and advanced the issue around equity and justice, because I think social justice and economic justice is no justice. So let's talk about how we're using supply diversity and the work that you're doing to be some success. It could be a success story with an MBE. It could be your focus in the work. But I'd like to hear, I'd like for the community to hear how your company is taking those ideas of supply diversity and really penetrating or infecting the whole business. How about you, Dion? Christina, you first.
Yeah, I think for PepsiCo, one of our big initiatives this year, after our CEO made our public commitment, we focus a lot on marketing and agency spend. And so what we're doing is we are working with Black-owned agencies in ways that we never have before. A couple of great examples. One is Aunt Jemima is no longer one of our staple brands. We have transitioned that brand to the Pearl Milling Company, and we hired Black agencies to work on that brand and the rebrand, from the brand strategy and positioning all the way to the retail execution, down to using diverse businesses to create T-shirts and premiums to actually advertise the new brand. So I would say what we found is not only were we using diverse agencies from top to bottom, but what those diverse agencies were also doing was the insights works they were doing on our behalf. They were hiring diverse insights companies to work for PepsiCo as well. I would say marketing is a huge one for us this year, just because it's no surprise, right? We spend billions of dollars in A&M. And I'm happy to say that in a short 6 months, we have onboarded 8 Black agencies to work across global PepsiCo brands, right? So we have Black marketing agencies working across Doritos, Quaker, the Pearl Milling Company. We have all of our brands have really taken on this initiative, and I feel great about the work that we're doing and how we're furthering this agenda in a really, really unique and positive way.
Thank you, Dion. Great answer, Christina.
Say, Farhad, if I can share from a MasterCard perspective as well. So I want to share about it from a couple of different dimensions. So from a society standpoint, MasterCard is committed, to Christina's point, with everything that we just kind of reflect on, the unbiases, the injustices, or the biases, the injustice that have occurred over the last year. MasterCard made a pledge that we're going to spend $500 million in focus cities around the U.S. to really help those communities, to elevate those communities as it relates to their ability to be able to work in a digital e-commerce business, right? Or whether it comes to helping support those communities, to elevate those communities in terms of being able to help foster more economic development and activity within those communities. from a people standpoint, we're working with historically Black universities and colleges as it relates to setting up curriculum for them so that the graduates that come out of there can be really successful in terms of at least supporting, from our perspective, the fintech space, right? We're putting more emphasis around recruiting from these companies or from these universities. We're putting more emphasis around philanthropic development, that we're working hand in hand with these historic Black universities. From a market perspective, from a supplier diversity standpoint, we're really encouraging the relationships that we build with our suppliers, especially as it relates to this solidarity effort, we call it, which is really a focus around Black-owned businesses, for example, because we have many different efforts around different areas. So we have Girls for Tech as it relates to being able to allow people at a young age to really get into technology, see that technology is cool, and be involved with technology. But from a Black-owned business perspective, we want to encourage, and I think one of our suppliers is on the call today, to really get back to the community with the development work that we're doing with them, with the services that they're providing to us as well. So I just wanted to share a little bit of perspective across different dimensions of what MasterCard is doing in terms of supporting the community.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Fareed, and this is called the Wolf of Diversity. In the spirit of the title, The Wolf of Wall Street, I remember a quote, if you watched that movie, it said, "You can watch me, mock me, try to block me, but you cannot stop me." And so in that vein, when we think about supplier diversity at Ameren, we've been going at it strong for a little while now. I mean, we've moved from sort of a compliance-based initiative back in 2006. We were doing less than 73 million in spend. Last year, we finished at 810 million and got a goal of 820 million this year. But to your question,
Can you hear him, or can't you just me?
Can't hear him. We can't hear him.
Can't hear you, Mr. Witherspoon. We're not trying to block you or stop you because we know you're the Wolf of Wall Street, but brother, we can't hear you.
Do you want me to go for a ride while he gets back on?
Yeah, won't you go ahead and go while he tries to get back? Go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about our We Stand United collaborative effort that I talked about before. So that was created and supported by United senior leaders and informed by employees, customers, communities, and suppliers. So we really wanted to do something in the wake of the George Floyd killing, as well as the Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and countless other Black people. So We Stand United is a commitment in furtherance of our shared purpose of connecting people and uniting the world to create real, impactful, and sustainable change within the company and in the communities where we work, live, and fly. That was really, really important to us after everything that was going on. And so We Stand United and is calling for equality, equity, and racial justice in our society and company. And we acknowledge that it has to start with each of us. So before we can take this out to our communities and to our suppliers and to our employees, it had to start with us. So we really needed to make that commitment internally first. And as a result, we relaunched our Executive Council on Diversity and Inclusion here at United, and it's now called the Executive Council on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So we included equity in there. And it's comprised of all members of our senior executive leadership team and our Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. And so we have established this team, as I mentioned, to go out and to really have a cross-functional team that serves as an engine for developing and executing on strategy recommendations from our colleagues, customers, and communities as well. So that's what we're doing right now to give back to the community and to really try to reinitiate things in the wake of everything that was going on in 2020.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have voices be heard about supply diversity. A lot of times, corporations in the past have looked at supply diversity as a cost, right? We had to do this compliance model or do this. And now we're moving towards indicating and showing how not only how to reach your goals in the responsible work, but also in the profit. We're able to help you make some profits. So I really appreciate you all talking around the diversity. I think is come back. Is he back?
I am back. Can
Well,
you
look,
hear
man.
me okay?
Look, man. Won't you bring the, drop the knowledge like you dropped it before, but don't
Man, I'm gonna give you the truncated version this time. I was on the roll, and all of a sudden I started talking to myself, and I got to note the beauty of technology to say, "Hey, man, you're disconnected." And so here I am, man. But let me just tell you a success story, because when we think about the principles of supply diversity at Ameren, access, right? How do we create meaningful opportunities? I have a team that looks to get the suppliers inside our business, and so it becomes beyond sort of this check the box exercise. What we really look to do is get the suppliers in front of the decision makers in the business. And to give you an example that sort of illustrates that, the other piece of it is development. Creating those meaningful opportunities that allow suppliers to develop on our property. And so they may not necessarily be those large dollar opportunities, but nonetheless, there are opportunities that allow them to cash flow, create some predictability to keep and maintain work. And at the end of the day, it's the long-term sustainable relationships. And so supply diversity is more of a culture. In fact, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a culture. We don't want for spend's sake. We want to create a partnership. And to that end, we had an MBE supplier, about 5 years ago, give or take a year, came knocked at the door at Ameren, and we worked inside the business. In fact, the team members on the call did some great advocacy with inside one of our business segments, got an opportunity for that company. Now, they initially started off in a mentoring type of relationship. And so they had a definite beginning and exit strategy. But the point of it is they moved from one crew 5 years ago to now they have 5 crews on property, and they're a long-term partner of ours. And so it really does demonstrate sort of the excellent practices I think we have in place to, to create opportunities for diverse businesses. But Fareed, you froze. I want to make sure people are still moving, because sometimes I'm looking at the camera and I don't see any movement. Can you still hear me okay? There you go. There you go. Thanks so much.
We'll jam into your rhythm. You dropping the knowledge on the beats. So call you Swiss beats with a spoon. But listen, I wanted to kind of move this forward in understanding how everyone has been talking about the economic impact of the work. I was really impressed, Christina, when you were talking around, you were following your diverse suppliers that were doing second tier with more diverse suppliers. What I learned in this business is that sometimes we don't have the capacity, and that it's not going to just happen organically. It's going to happen through partnerships and acquisitions and mergers and mentorship. And so do you measure this in your work in supply diversity and able to catalog that so that you can tell your company that all of the economic impact that's coming from this work?
Fareed, are you asking about tier 2, Fareed?
Yeah, I'm asking about tier 2, but really, how are you tracking, encouraging your tier 1s to ingratiate tier 2, right? There's a way to do tier 2 where you say you do this, when I move, you move, just like there's that way of doing tier 2. But then there's a way you could move as partners, where you can say, hey, look, we're going to do this together. Yeah, I'm going to get 70% of it. You'll get 30%, but we're going to do this together. How are y'all nurturing that kind of business in the work that y'all are doing? And anyone can take the question.
I'll jump and then I'll pause. So, I would tell you sort of the genesis of how we initially approached tier 2 and where we're at today. And so when I started Ameren back in 2007, we were really sort of ad hoc doing tier 2. It was being done on a quarter, 4 times a year, right? And so we'd have a supply diversity professional track it on the quarter, which means that the suppliers were reporting on the quarter, and it really didn't create the sort of rhythm and cadence that we were looking for. And so I've had some experience in the public sector, and we were doing tier 2 on a monthly basis. But now what we wanted to do was move from sort of this punitive approach to a more collaborative partnership approach. And so what we did, number of things. One, we moved from a quarter to monthly. And I recall when we said we were going monthly, a bunch of eye rolling and that. It's like, okay, because we had to put a system in place in order to track it on a monthly basis. And we've matured since that initial system till today. But what we've done is in our RFPs, we've put expectation, tier 2 language, for suppliers to provide a utilization plan, if you will, on what they were going to do from a tier 2 perspective. And based on the awards, we also increased some weightings in that. But to your point, to your question, now we track it on a monthly basis. It's created the right rhythm and cadence both for our teams and the suppliers. We've really gone out to maybe the top 50, 60 suppliers that's reporting our tier 2. And what we've seen is, a growth in tier 2 spending, ending last year, a couple $100 million or so in tier 2 spending. But now, what we have in place, like if you think about how do we go and check periodically, the supply diversity professionals will, pick up a phone and call to check the supplier when they're reporting to ask what have they been paid. I actually just got a note that said it's not 50 to 60, it's 100 that we're out to now. So I want to be factually correct that we're actually tracking 100 suppliers who are reporting into our tool. And so that's sort of our process today. It's been going well. Tier 2 makes up about a third of our overall spend. Our tier 1 spending is still 2/3, but what we're seeing as dollars are being consolidated, we're going to see, more sort of leaning in with creating more tier 2 opportunities.
Yeah, I can jump in to talk about Pepsi's tier 2 program. We have a pretty robust tier 2 program with more than 200 companies reporting their diverse spend efforts, and they report that to us quarterly. We have about 500 million, over 500 million in tier 2. I think one of the important things we have done as PepsiCo is had conversations with our top suppliers on the importance of our racial equality journey. And this is where we're headed as a company. And if you want PepsiCo's business, it's in your best interest to head down this journey with us, right? So part of our global CEO's commitment was about using PepsiCo's buying power and scale to drive impactful change across the communities. And so I think it's important to hold our suppliers that we're spending lots of money with, right, accountable to being on the same journey that we as PepsiCo are a part of. So that was the one thing I was going to add. And then also just from a tier 2 perspective, we have standard language in every contract. And we partner with our buyers on what the appropriate target is for a specific supplier based on the size and scope of the contract and the work.
I'll go next. I really agree with most of what Byron and what Christina said as well for what we do here at United. We are really working towards elevating our tier 2 process as well. And we're doing that through including that tier 2 language in our agreements. And it's really about communication. If they don't know why it's important to us, then we're going to have a harder time with getting them to comply with that reporting. So we're really working with all of our teams as part of that We Stand United initiative to make sure that we have the right language, that it's in the contracts. I know Farad loves it when I say that, We Stand United. So we're working to get that in all of our contracts. We do collect reporting quarterly now, but what we noticed was that all of our business verticals were a little bit different. And they need that information on a different cadence. So they needed it for different reasons. For example, our corporate real estate team really found that they needed that tier 2 information monthly. So we changed our portal that for their specific construction tier 1s, they have to report that information on a monthly basis. And it is dependent upon their getting their, invoices paid. So we sort of went a different route for our CRE team, and we're working with our other 8 verticals to figure out what do they need, because it turned out to not be a one size fits all for all of our verticals. So we're currently working through that and really trying to increase compliance. But it's about our primes knowing why it's important to us, and so we're really working through that right now.
Yeah, and just to share maybe a MasterCard perspective as it relates to tier 2. So it's all about the maturity of kind of where you are in the program. So we absolutely have contracts in place with every supplier where they have to report this, but it's the next evolution. And so we're starting to have the conversations with the suppliers as well as to, it's not only important for you to be able to drive diverse suppliers in your ecosystem, but also how can they be better connected to MasterCard? And so are there components of your spend that we can carve out that now we can be a tier 1 supplier to that supplier, and then where they have maybe weaknesses or gaps, you as a tier 1 today can help complement them as a tier 2. So it's kind of flipping the roles a little bit that we're looking at. And then also, I think as Gerald can attest to from one of our suppliers that's on this call, we're also looking at how can we accelerate the development of a tier 1 that could have been potentially a tier 2 for one of our suppliers before, in terms of partnering with other tier 1s that maybe don't have as much business with us. And at some point later in the conversation, if we want to talk further about it, we can. But I thought I'd share a few points there.
Oh, that's really great. You know, another thing I want to talk around, and you mentioned this earlier, is how a lot of us understand that HBCUs are the foundation for how we grow our, minority population, right? Education to get opportunities and jobs. Do you see that you're seeing more entrepreneurs that are young coming from HBCUs, or what's your corporation's commitment to working with HBCUs so that they thrive in this environment? And anyone can start.
I can start from a PepsiCo perspective. So from a supplier diversity perspective, we do not track any spend with nonprofits as certified spend. And I would say that the sponsorship of HBCUs falls within I said in the beginning, we have people, business, and community. It falls within our people pillar. And we're tracking our engagement with HBCUs through HR and talent acquisition. I will say, as a part of our racial equality journey under the people pillar, we committed to expanding our recruitment efforts with HBCUs. And this summer, about 2 weeks ago, we just welcomed over 50 HBCU interns. So I would say Pepsi is stepping up in a major way with our HBCU recruiting. We recognize that it was a gap in our recruitment strategy, and we have channeled that and are doing some pretty awesome things with our HBCU community.
Can I share am I coming through? Okay, so it's been amazing working with Patel with my company, Turnberry Premier, Principal Execution Turnberry Premier. And, I'm an HBCU graduate myself. And one of the things I learned early on in business was the value of a network. And so one of the things I'm doing with my business and my team at Turnberry is going back and really targeting HBCUs, looking at how we can develop an HBCU intern program that we can then, as we grow our business with MasterCard and other vendors and other suppliers that we're working with, that we can then go out and, as PepsiCo is doing, hire HBCU students and bring them into the business, but also teach them the skills, not just the resume skills, but to teach them the networking skills, how to go out and build a network that will feed you for the rest of your life and allow you to create the wealth because of the folks that you're bringing into your network and what your reach throughout your community.
Joe, that was important. Very important to hear. And I think for the community to understand that as we got DBEs and MBEs in space growing and developing, that they're also reaching back in the community, which would align, Christina was talking around, which aligns with the principles of maybe your client around really making an impact in community. Whoever wants to go next.
I'll go next. I'm not sure if you guys know, but we all actually started our own flight school called Aviate because we noticed that there weren't a lot of women pilots. There weren't a lot of minority pilots, Black pilots. So we decided we're going to go out there. We're going to find them. We're going to train them ourselves. We're going to get them into, our flight school. And to do that, we partnered with 3 HBCUs in order to get some African-American pilots from those HBCUs and get them right into our flight school, Aviate. And they're among the ones who are going to be trained over the next decade to become pilots for United Airlines. And we're also doing the same for women and other minorities as well, but it has a specific focus with the HBCUs for African American students to get them right into our Aviate school and to have more African American pilots, because we saw there absolutely were not enough. And we knew we had to do something. And we said, well, we're going to find them. We're going to train them ourselves. So that's what we're doing right now.
You go the big U, do it, do it, do it. Pratik or Byron?
Yeah, I don't have much to add from what Christina said. I mean, you know, from an Ameren perspective, when we think about supply diversity, we don't track HBCU spend. But we do have a heavy push, you know, from an HR perspective overall to recruit from HBCUs. In fact, you know, there is incentive compensation tied to having diverse candidate slates. And so it will require, you know, I guess the expectation for not just, you know, recruiting from the traditional schools that we've had, but from diversifying, you know, the institutions that we go to with a more targeted approach. With HBCUs.
Thank you.
I would say too, Farad, one other quick comment, just from a PepsiCo perspective that I think is important is it's not just about recruiting HBCU talent, it's about retaining them, right? And so one of the things that we have done is created a campus to corporate boot camp, because we recognize that we don't want to just put talent into PepsiCo and not teach them how does PepsiCo operate? What are the expectations? You know, what can you look forward to? So we basically created a mini boot camp ahead of time just to make sure that all of our 50 plus interns came in having a leg up over some of the other interns, right? Knowing that we want to set them up for success, because if we recruit them and don't retain them, then it doesn't mean anything.
You know, Pratik, I know you're jumping in, but you know, Christina, I appreciate you making that point. It's such a great point. From the retaining standpoint, you know, you can have the best laid strategy. One of the things we say at Ameren, and there's actually a book out called Culture Eats Strategy for Lunch. And so regardless of what your strategy is, if you don't have the culture for retaining, you know, through what you talk about with your boot camps, through ERGs, through sponsorships, through mentors, then it's all for naught, right? It's just words on a page. It doesn't, you know, it's aspirational. And so we've really taken the point to see what those conversion rates are, right? How are we not only recruiting, but how are we retaining them? But more importantly, how are we partnering them up with mentors that have similar experiences? And I'm talking about senior level leaders from ERG engagements to having some direct one-on-one mentoring, you know, opportunities. So you create sort of this this dynamic where people can be their authentic selves when they come to work. So Christina, I really appreciate you sort of, you know, expanding upon that recruiting to the retaining point is a great one. Thanks so much.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that perspective, Christina. So I think I already kind of shared from a MasterCard perspective, there's three components that we're doing, which is curriculum, really helping to help drive the curriculum from a recruitment perspective. And then the other piece is the philanthropic development. But the one thing that I do want to maybe expand upon that kind of relates to HBCUs, but also just in general as it relates to environmental, social governance, ESG, right, is from a MasterCard standpoint, it is tied to compensation for anyone that's an executive level and above. So our pledges that we make out in the community, we're serious about them, we're focused on them, and it has an impact on their compensation. You know, and an HBCU is no different as it relates to the skill building and everything that we are doing as it relates to helping foster and optimize this channel in terms of driving diversity for us.
That's great. Thank you. It's important to hear that the cultures are changing. It's unfortunate why maybe the penetration is there for ESG and the culture for diversity and having commitments for presidents, which is very important. No matter how the land is tilled, we're excited that something is happening. So I would like to ask a question that we maybe not be prepared for, but just think about how are we making sure that we're helping our suppliers to grow, right? And not just in giving them more business, but giving them the mind share so they can get more market share. Does your businesses do anything to ensure that your businesses will move from a tier 3 to a tier 2 to a tier 1? I'm not saying guarantee it, but to really foster it or provide some the ability for them to do that.
Maybe I'll start with this one, if I can. So this has a lot of different dimensions to it. So one dimension, and I kind of highlighted it earlier a little bit, is there's going to be limitations as it relates to diverse suppliers based on their scale, based on their skill set, based on maybe geographic location presence that could limit the opportunities. And we didn't want to do that at MasterCard. So what we did is we asked, in this case, Turnberry Premier is on the call. We asked them, are you open to partner with another supplier that has the depth and breadth? Because it will help accelerate your opportunities and help accelerate your ability to grow inside our company. And they absolutely embraced that. This partner that we connected them to, absolutely. So the key thing there when you connect a partner is also that, do they fit culturally? Do they have the humility and the humbleness to really allow for this diverse supplier to grow in our ecosystem as well? And I think in this situation, it was a marriage that has worked out pretty well so far. And I think Gerald could attest to it, but I think that overall it's been successful for us. So that's one piece, is just partnering our diverse supplier. The second piece is coaching and developing them. We have to understand that our incumbents may have more intelligence, insights into what is it going to take to win the business. The newer suppliers, the diverse suppliers, the smaller suppliers may not have some of those opportunities. And so we have to be intentional about giving them an equal playing field. And how we give them an equal playing field is giving them the insights on what is it going to take to be successful in terms of winning the business. So I just thought I'd share two perspectives in terms of what we need to be able to do to help grow our diverse supply base.
And I'd like to follow up with that to say, Pratik, he walks the talk of what he just said, because that's what he did with my company. And literally from the time that we were introduced and networked and talked and realized that this was a fit for us to become a supplier to MasterCard, and maybe I'm jumping ahead with some of the other questions that you have, but they literally grabbed our hand and walked us through the process and met with my team on a weekly basis to kind of coach them, mentor them, shepherd them, made the introduction to the larger partner company that we're tied with now and partnered with. And we had very complementary skill set. And so it really worked out in an amazing way. And we would not be where we are if it wasn't for Pratik and his coaching, mentoring, and support, and really just believing in everything that he just said.
You know, that's such a big deal. You know, Gerald, you talk about walking the talk, and that is sort of the essence of what our team has to be when we talk about development. That is a key pillar for Ameren, and so we sort of execute that on a number of different ways. We have multiple business segments within our utility, and sometimes we have suppliers who might be working for one business segment and not working for another. And given that we're a shared services organization, our team has visibility across enterprise. And I kind of liken it to the Yelp rating, right? And so if you have a supplier that's performing well in one business segment and they're doing similar work in the other business segments, then we're going to share that supplier across segment. And ultimately what we'll do is get sort of the Yelp rating from where they've had some success, because generally the segments like to hear from their peers. And when somebody can stand up and say, hey, this company performed well, now we're talking about just leveraging that work across the enterprise. That's one aspect of development. Now, we do have a formal development initiative in terms of mentoring, right? And so it's one thing, we have a couple scholarships that we issue, but that's sort of commonplace in the industry to talk, the School of Business. But the other is more internal. And it really does give suppliers insight to what's important to us. And Pratik, you mentioned that. Look, having an excellent safety initiative, we're a utility, You know, you don't get 9 lives if you're out on our infrastructure. You have to understand the importance of safety. Quality, right? Advising and informing, educating on what it means to have a good quality management program. Project management. How do you go about it? You know, aligning with, syncing up with what our business segments are doing from a project management perspective. And there's some other sort of courses that we find valuable for us, that we make sure we get it in front of our suppliers. And again, even if it goes to helping them increase their capacity where they're doing some work in the region and they come back to us. So we've had several success stories. One, Fareed, I mentioned to you, but I can sort of enumerate, you know, several on a smaller basis. I'll share this and I'll be quiet, right? You know, our procurement policy says we have to go to bid anything over $100,000, but there are a lot of work that's under $100,000, and it's really a rich, a fertile ground for suppliers, diverse, small, otherwise, to sort of to cut the teeth in the space with Ameren to be successful, right? And so then we can create some predictability, we can get some cash flow going, we can get some success. Then that's the most important thing, is to get that success to where they can increasingly grow their spend over time. And that really does underscore our efforts toward developing our suppliers. One last thing. I sound I'm sorry, go ahead, Fred.
You are preaching, brother, you know, and I'm going to drink a Pepsi to your preaching right now. I'm going to take communion. But I do want to say it's so important, you know, as an MBE, I'm blessed that I'm the largest Black-owned business in North Texas, and was really excited about that opportunity. But what I really also understand, we work so hard in the business that sometimes we need to work on the business. So having a developmental strategy is always important for us to grow, because the competition, things are moving so fast, opportunities come so quickly, that if we're not ready for these opportunities, or not prepared, or not synced in, then we get lost, right? And so it's sometimes all boats don't rise when the tide rises. And so for minority businesses, having a strategy for them to stay sustainable, successful, and have the equipment, which is the mental equipment, the physical equipment, the infrastructure equipment, is going to be able for them to be successful. And Dion, I don't want to leave the you out of this, so go ahead and tell me about how we going to stay united.
Thank you. I'd like to take a minute to talk about one of our verticals, our corporate real estate team, and they have been deemed by us a center of excellence, because they've really taken on supplier diversity. They've taken it to the next level. And to that end, they've done so much for capacity building for our MBE and WBE suppliers. And they do that through so many things. It's mentoring, it's educating, which is so important. The hand holding, like we mentioned. They do monthly check-ins and workshops and learning lessons, email follow-ups. I mean, really anything that you could possibly do. And some of those topics include insurance and risk, permitting, airport contracts, invoicing, packaging, anything that you would need to know to be successful in our industry. And 2 such MBEs were able to take their contract with us from about less than $100,000 all the way up to about $5 million a year through this mentoring that our CRE team is doing. And they're ready to introduce a second class of mentors pretty soon. And so it's been really successful. And we're trying to take that model and redevelop that and put it with our other verticals as well. Because as I mentioned, all of our verticals are different. They're all separate business units and they need different things. So we're going to adapt that model so that we can do the same thing in those units as well. But it's been really, really successful in our corporate real estate team.
I'm going to ask you something that none of y'all probably really want to answer, but like people like MBEs are really important for us to hear. And so now I'm putting y'all on blast, but y'all may or may not see me again. Love you all anyway. Tell us, what work are you doing internally to advance supply diversity? Because I know the game, right? I've worked with corporations. I'm not saying nothing bad about any corporations, but I do understand the culture of the procurement people and how they buy and they look for price and quality and all the things that they have, whatever their chart is. And it may or may not speak to utilization of MBEs. How about I say that? So how do you ensure or advise or educate inside of your organization to allow for MBEs to get a fair chance for opportunity inside your organization? And this would be something suppliers would be really interested to hear, because that's where the real work is done. It's not at the conferences, it's inside your organizations.
Yeah, I can start. From a PepsiCo perspective, you hit it when you said quality, cost, and service. So we will never sacrifice on quality, cost, and service. And the good thing is, with diverse suppliers, we don't have to. And I think that is a misnomer sometimes, right? Because you inherently within your own bias sometimes think that smaller businesses, privately owned businesses can't compete at the level that we're asking them to compete. And the reality is, not only can they, but it's our job to open the door to make sure they get the opportunity to do so. So that's number one. I think for us, from PepsiCo's perspective, right, we have top-down support from our global CEO who said, you will get this done, right? And if you know PepsiCo, we don't miss commitments, especially not ones that we have publicly committed to externally. So we have tied our supplier diversity objectives to compensation. Our buyers are incentivized more now than they ever have been in the past to hit these numbers. And that means doing things in ways that we've never done before. And I think from my team, from a whole supplier diversity perspective, we're doing things like engaging in a full-on comm strategy internally, right? We're doing global learn-togethers. We had one with our GM and CEO of the Quaker business unit, Nidra Dixon from Accenture, to discuss the value of supplier diversity, what it means, what it doesn't mean. We had over 300 attendees from global PepsiCo attend that. We created a supplier diversity e-training module, which is mandatory for all global procurement associates. So we have 1,000 employees that are taking that course. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do internally. I think the third thing that we're doing as PepsiCo is listen and learn roundtables. So we are conducting roundtables with the NMSDC, USHCC. We're trying to really understand what these communities and cohorts specifically need. What are the problems to solve? We're talking to suppliers in ways we haven't before. Tell us what you've never been able to tell us because you're scared you're not going to get work again, about how we as PepsiCo need to get better to support MBEs. And nothing's off the table, right? It could be payment terms. It could be insurance policies. It's anything that, you want us to go work on internally to figure out how to better the playing field for some of our smaller businesses. And this is what gets me excited, because this is all the things that my team works on to help remove the internal barriers that exist within PepsiCo for diverse businesses.
You know what, Christina, I agree with that 100%. We also take a top-down approach. Our president is an African-American man, and he, definitely lets everyone know, his direct reports and everyone, as it trickles down, how important it is to work with minorities. So that's first and foremost for us. And we also created an e-learning module, which has been wildly successful. I had a great time. I had a hand in creating that, and it's also required, required knowledge for our team, all of our category managers. But we also took it one step further. We created a team of business diversity ambassadors. So for each of our verticals, or rather each of the direct reports under our CEO, they have nominated ambassadors, and that one person has taken on the charge and the initiative to roll out these efforts throughout their teams, because it's too much for supplier diversity to do alone. It's too much for our CEO to do alone. It's too much for our president to do alone. So we needed some help. So we have ambassadors all the way up from the senior vice president level, all the way down to analysts, anyone who's willing to, help us out. And so they are taking on that knowledge, and they're taking on the responsibility and the commitment. And they know how important it is to our president, Brett Hart, to work with diverse suppliers, specifically African American suppliers, is where we're really trying to increase our spend right now. So because we get that commitment from the top, it's been so much easier for us to get that follow through the rest of our team. And we're actually launching our business ambassador program later on this month. So we're really excited.
Man, listen. You guys done work my adrenaline up. I mean, because you're so spot on with the things that behind the curtains. And Fareed, it's such an excellent question, because we know the supply diversity professionals knows behind the scenes the efforts that have to go in place. And what you both talked about, Dion and Christine, is culture. I said on the top end, culture eats strategy for luncheon, right? And so we understand the top down, the cascading message that comes down. I always say it's the sine qua non. It's absolutely essential for the work to happen. And now when you start thinking about how does the work happen, right? You got some incentive metrics there. But now you're talking about those leading indicators that's going to sort of support the final score or the spend. And so much like what the two others have said, we have quarterly, we have a steering committee in each of our verticals in our business segments. They meet on the quarter and they meet with my team. We have an opportunity to have suppliers in those meetings to talk about the goods and services, what values they can provide to the business. When we talk about development, be educating our procurement and business segments, right? So we are a participant in the contract development team when we go from RFP to award. We're there every step of the way. I tell you some things that we did change in order to help impact and influence, greater success. When you think about the balanced scorecard and you're looking at the award, obviously cost, quality, and service is big, and safety is big for us, but we also have supplier diversity. That's a component of the scorecard. At one point in time, supplier diversity was weighted at about 3%. 3% was not moving the needle. We actually went through pretty significant effort, to increase that weighting. And as you can imagine, the discussion was about, well, who's going to give up something for you to get something? And so we had that dynamic, but we ultimately increased that weighting up enough to make it even more meaningful and significant, when we're going through the contract award. And so, to my colleagues, I get excited because, right now we're sort of the amplified version of supplier diversity, given the climate that we're in, but we're only getting stronger. And I think it creates additional opportunity for innovation, that lean in that we talk about, or those things that where the finish line continues to move. And so, the opportunities for us to even get better are on the horizon, and that's even more of what we're working through.
All right, thank you. Christina, bring us home. That was the last question, and they're dinging me, so bring us home.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I am absolutely inspired by what I'm hearing from the rest of the panelists, because this is amazing, the work you guys are doing. I don't think MasterCard is quite at the maturity level that you are internally, but what I would tell you from a MasterCard perspective is we have town halls on a quarterly basis where we're talking about our diversity efforts, and it's a no holds bar when it comes to the employees and the questions that are asked. We have steerco meetings on a monthly basis where we're held accountable to. And we try to do it more from a brute force perspective, I guess, in terms of just ensuring that whenever we have RFPs, that we have to consider diverse suppliers. And we don't get pushback on that because we have the support from the top down. So I know we're out of time, but I would kind of share that. But I'm absolutely inspired by what I'm hearing from everyone else. And I look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Well, listen, I just want to thank everyone for being here. You have just witnessed the wolves of Wall Street. Oh, I'm sorry, of diversity. I had to wrap a delight back there with Professor Witherspoon. But you have seen the wolves of diversity. You got a chance to see programs that have been diverse, understanding the impact of business and how it handles the communities with the people, HBCUs, Tier 1, Tier 2. I pray you take this knowledge and apply it to your business to help you grow. And for diversity professionals, I hope you learn something that can help you deepen your relationship with diverse suppliers. To all, thank you. God bless. Peace. Thank you. Stay well.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Wow, thanks so much, Farad. Everyone, attendees, I hope that you enjoyed this workshop. And again, Farad, the wolf of diversity, not the wolf of Wall Street.
The wolves, baby, the wolves.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. But again, what a stellar panelist of impactful information from, again, all diverse corporations. So again, thank you so much, Mr. Farad Ali, for your moderation and your continued support of Chicago MSDC. Also, a huge thank you to the incredible panelists, Christina Tyson of PepsiCo, Ms. Dion Creighton of United Airlines, Mr. Pratik Patel of MasterCard, and Mr. Byron Witherspoon of Amarin. We heard of PepsiCo's commitment to diverse suppliers and United's commitment, we stand united, to get to the $1 billion roundtable by 2025. Also, MasterCard's diversity breeds diversity. I love that, Pratik. Definitely going to add that into my daily use of verbiage, if you will. And of course, Amarin's approach to help diverse businesses grow collectively. We heard each organization's commitment to supplier diversity. And as Mr. Witherspoon so eloquently stated, you can watch me, mock me, try to block me, but you cannot stop me. This type of resilience is exactly what fuels MBEs and this network of solid MBEs to continue our efforts to develop MBEs, identify strategic partners, and provide fair chances of opportunities. It was discussed that through intentional collaboration, working as a team and partners to nurture tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers to work together is a goal that each of them are going for. We also heard about the importance of identifying diverse talent and working intentionally with nonprofit organizations and HBCUs. Knowing what it takes to level the playing field and be inclusive of all diverse suppliers.